Hey guys, tonight we're walking into Harlem in the 1970s, where smoke rises off the sidewalks and dreams are tough as leather. You'll hear the hiss of radiators in crumbling apartments, the static of old radios playing Curtis Mayfield and Marvin Gaye, and the crackle of fried fish in the pan downstairs. But in one apartment, flames, not oil, were the soundtrack. This is where Azie Faison's story begins. Not with glory, not with gold, but with fire. He's just 6 years old when it happens. The building creaks with the kind of fatigue only old New York knows. Wood floors worn from footsteps, wallpaper peeled like tired skin. Azie's asleep when the fire starts. No warning, no smoke alarm, just heat, smoke, panic, and the choking terror of not knowing if your next breath will even come. The blaze rips through their floor, devouring memories and nearly taking lives. Some say moments like that fracture a soul, crack it like ice under pressure. Others believe they forge you. Azie, he carries it like a ghost he never learned to exorcise. They escape. Barely. But with nothing left but each other and the scent of smoke in their clothes. Many people still think that trauma is a wound you outgrow, that time closes it like skin. But Azie walks with it, always. Not on the surface, not loud, but in the way he watches exits, the way he notices who's got matches in their pocket. So what do you think? Does pain fade or just change its name? After the fire, the family moves up to the Bronx, briefly. A new borough, same struggle. Azie's mother does what she can, raising kids with limited means and infinite worry. His father, not around, but that's not rare. In the neighborhoods where ceilings leak and bills whisper threats, single mothers hold up entire buildings with willpower. Azie's older brother becomes his anchor. Quiet but fierce, protective but not coddling. The kind of brother who teaches you how to bob a punch and how to spot a lie. And in Harlem, that's Survival 101. Azie's new school feels like a zoo run by the animals. Teachers yell to be heard, desks wobble. The janitor keeps his headphones in and eyes down. No one's really learning, but everyone's watching. And Azie? He watches more than most. He notices who always has new sneakers, who comes to school late and leaves early with pockets bulging, who never eats the cafeteria lunch but pulls out cash like it's normal. These aren't honor roll kids. They're the ones everyone warns about. And yet somehow, they seem to have figured out the world in a way no textbook ever taught. At recess, he hears names whispered like legends. Fat Cat, Nicky Barnes, Frank Lucas. To some, they're villains. To kids like Azie, they're proof that rules can be bent, that money doesn't always come with a college degree. He doesn't talk much, just listens, absorbs. File after file of silent observation, stored away for later. The dry cleaner job comes when he's around 15. It's not glamorous, but it's cash in hand and respect in the house. His mother beams the first time he hands her his paycheck. A grown-up moment. A sliver of dignity in a city that eats dignity for breakfast. But the job's just a front row seat to the show Harlem puts on daily. Out the window, cars double park while guys with gold chains lean against them, exchanging nods and handshakes that mean far more than hellos. Inside, Azie presses collars and steam sleeves, but his mind is outside. With them, one day, a regular customer leaves behind his jacket. In the pocket, a knot of 20s so thick it bends the fabric. No wallet, just a note with a number and a name Azie's never heard. He doesn't take it, doesn't even mention it, but he remembers it. The feel of that cash, the weight of it, the message. There's another way. He doesn't jump into dealing right away. That's a myth people like to tell. No. First, there's hesitation. Days where he talks himself out of it. Nights where he wonders what his mother would say. But curiosity grows teeth, and ambition gets loud. By now, Harlem is shifting again. The music's faster. The corners are busier. And Azie, no longer just a boy watching from the window, starts testing the water. Small stuff. Just enough to see if the whispers match the reality. They do. But Harlem doesn't hand out promotions. It tests you first. And Azie's first lesson? You can't trust smiles or silences. A guy tries to short him on a deal. Not by much. Just enough to see if Azie will bark. He does. But instead of fists, he uses words. Calm. Firm. Unshakable. The older guys notice, and just like that, he's no longer the kid at the cleaners. He's a name you repeat with interest, a face you don't forget. He doesn't own Harlem, not yet, but he's earned the right to dream about it, and dream he does. Harlem doesn't sleep, it simmers. The sun comes up, but it's not the kind of sunrise that warms you. It just reveals everything left behind from the night before. Empty bottles, tired footsteps, crumpled bills in jacket pockets, and dreams still stuck in ashtrays. Azie walks these streets like he's memorizing them. Every stoop, every corner store, every shadowy alley behind a chain-link fence. He's 16 now, taller, leaner, quieter still, but not invisible. Never invisible. The kind of young man you clock once and keep an eye on, not because he's loud, but because he's too still, too watchful. And in Harlem, stillness gets noticed. His dry cleaning days are numbered. He's figured out how much time costs, and the shop just isn't paying enough to waste his. Instead, his education comes from the corners, from the way traffic slows when certain cars roll through, from the laughter of men who haven't worked a legal job in years, but wear silk and drive Benzes, from the rituals, how you stand, how you talk, who you nod to first. By now, Azie's running low-level product, small enough to stay off the radar, big enough to matter. He doesn't call it dealing. He calls it practice, and he's good. Too good. He doesn't make noise, doesn't flash. He doesn't need to. The ones who flash are usually the ones who don't last. Still, Harlem watches. Harlem talks. And in time, Harlem introduces him to Rich Porter. Rich is Harlem royalty. Even at 16, he walks like the street owes him a cut. He's got charisma like static. Everyone feels it, even if they don't want to. He's fast talking, loud laughing, draped in labels and surrounded by admiration that smells like envy. They meet through mutual acquaintances. Neither planned it. But the moment it happens, the street feels it. Two gravitational pulls meeting in the same orbit. Where Azie is quiet steel, Rich is gold-plated thunder. And weirdly, that's what makes it work. They aren't instant friends, not yet. First, they test each other. Rich cracks jokes, tries to push buttons. Azie just watches, offers a half smile, shrugs when the others laugh too hard. That shrug says, "I'm not impressed yet." Rich likes that. What bonds them isn't style. It's drive. They're both tired of middlemen. Tired of watching other people get rich off weak product and weak vision. They start talking shop in coded language. Weight, routes, prices. And there's no pretense. Azie doesn't brag. He strategizes. Rich doesn't ask if Azie's in. He just says, "You ready to stop playing small?" And from that moment, they start sketching something bigger than either of them. But even Harlem doesn't hand over its throne easy. Enter Alberto Alpo Martinez. He's younger, slicker, and hungrier in a way that borders on reckless. Raised in East Harlem, Alpo doesn't just want a piece. He wants the whole cake, the bakery, and the street it's built on. He meets Azie and Rich through mutual runners. At first, there's tension. Alpo's unpredictable, but he's got moves. And more importantly, he's got connections none of them do. Especially with the Dominican plugs flooding the city with powder. The three begin to orbit each other, and slowly, grudgingly, inevitably, they form a triangle. Azie is the mind, Rich is the face, Alpo is the speed. It's an alliance built on ambition, not trust. That would come later, or wouldn't, but it works. And when it works, Harlem feels it like a tremor. They start small, really small, a couple ounces here, a few friends doubling as runners, one corner, one apartment, no overhead, no mess. But Azie's thinking 3 moves ahead. While others count bills, he's sketching routes, envisioning scalability. He's not just dealing, he's building a system. And Rich? He makes it look like a music video. Velvet shirts, girls, gold chains, and a smile that sells without saying a word. He's not faking it. He just lives at that volume. Alpo? He's movement incarnate. No one hustles like him. He's on corners at dawn, in different boroughs by nightfall, always one step ahead of trouble. Or at least, that's how he tells it. Together, they start to carve out territory, not just geography, but rhythm. Their product moves cleaner, faster. Their style? Sharp. Their brand? Wordless, but potent. Even the crews that came before take notice. Azie insists on loyalty. He doesn't hire, he recruits. Friends he grew up with. People who've seen his worst. People who remember the fire. He tells them, we don't steal, we don't cheat, we move smart, or we don't move at all. And Harlem, already used to chaos, finds itself stunned by their precision. But it's not just hustle, it's culture. They influence fashion, lingo, the way younger hustlers wear their hats, carry their weight, even walk. Azie's low-key demeanor earns him a quiet legend status. He doesn't talk much, people say, but if he shows up, things are serious. By 1984, they're moving real weight. Mid-level becomes major. The money? Unimaginable. Not just enough to live, but to change lives. Azie buys his first car outright. No payments, no cosigner. Just cash and confidence. But the city's changing too. Reaganomics is hitting the block like a slap. Jobs vanish. Hope thins. And crack cocaine, once a whisper, becomes a roar. Azie sees it before most. He watches guys ditch powder for rock, chasing higher margins and quicker highs. But he hesitates. He sees what crack does, not just to users, but to neighborhoods, to futures, to childhoods. He tells Rich, I'm not sure we should go that route. Rich listens for a while, but crack pays faster. And speed? It's seductive. Still, they hold the line for now. But around them, Harlem accelerates. Everyone wants a piece. And in that heat, loyalty bends. Ambition mutates. And the streets, once a silent classroom, start to sound like a warning bell. And Azie, the quiet one, begins to hear it first. The game, by now, has picked up momentum. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't check in. It just moves, fast, loud, and merciless. Azie, Rich, and Alpo are no longer boys trying things out. They're businessmen now, whether they like the word or not. Their operation has grown teeth, sharp ones. The product moves in weight. The money stacks in quiet rooms, and Harlem watches them like stars on a screen that hasn't been invented yet. They're still teenagers. Rich handles the spotlight. Every corner boy wants to be him. He rides through Harlem like a king without a throne, always smiling, always moving, never alone. His outfits are louder than sirens. His car stereo plays full volume even at red lights. He's a walking poster for the American Dream Harlem edition. Azie prefers a quieter page. He's home before the city winds down, counting numbers, checking consistency, building a network that stretches like a spider web, careful, elegant, deadly to anything that moves the wrong way. And Alpo? He's climbing, fast, making his own calls, traveling up and down the East Coast, shaking hands that carry more power than they let on. He speaks street fluently, but now he's learning diplomacy too. If only his temper could keep pace. Together, they're more than a crew. They're an atmosphere. By now, they've got lieutenants. Boys who used to carry bags for them now carry their own weight. Loyalty runs deep. For now, they set rules, pay weekly, keep the business tight. Customers are protected. Runners are managed. Territories are drawn and respected. And then, one day, Azie sits back and realizes they've become the thing they used to whisper about. They're them now. It shows in the way store owners greet them. Smiles too wide, eyes a little too cautious. It shows in the way police cars drive just a bit slower past their hangouts, like measuring a ghost they're not ready to chase. It shows in the stacks. Because the stacks, they've grown monstrous. Cash comes in so fast they stop counting daily. Rubber bands, shoe boxes, stash spots layered behind walls and under floorboards. At first, it's exciting. Then, it's weight. You can't walk around with $5,000 in your pocket and not feel it. They upgrade. Cars, jewelry, clothes, apartments. But not recklessly. Azie makes sure of that. He doesn't need anyone asking questions. Doesn't want IRS nightmares or DEA curiosity. Keep it clean. Keep it moving. Rich doesn't always agree. He likes being seen. He needs to be seen. And Harlem? Harlem feeds that need. They cheer for him like he's a prize fighter. And in a way, he is. Meanwhile, Azie keeps expanding their network. He refines their system. Couriers trained to switch hands twice before drop-offs. Clean stash houses. Phones that change every week. No names ever spoken where microphones might live. He even drafts his own version of an employee manual. Unofficial, of course, but gospel to those who work with him. And people love working for him, because Azie, despite his power, stays humble. He pays fair. He listens. He keeps promises. In Harlem, that's rarer than diamonds. And yet, he's starting to feel the edge. The hours are endless. The pressure never stops. He can't relax. Not really. When he walks into a room, he scans exits without realizing. When someone says his name too loudly, his pulse flickers. The money's there, but sleep isn't. Meanwhile, Harlem changes around him. Crack is no longer optional. It's everywhere. Basements, park benches, back rooms. Mothers buying from sons. Sisters stealing from brothers. Whole blocks crumble in months, and Azie sees what it does to their people. He remembers the old Harlem, vibrant, proud, tired but fighting. Now it's twitchy, hollow-eyed, frantic. He resists selling crack at first. Tells Rich again, "It's not just business, man. This stuff burns through families, but the demand is too strong." Other crews step in. Suddenly, they're losing territory. Not to violence, but to addiction. Not acting feels like retreat, so they pivot. They start moving crack, but with limits. Azie insists on keeping certain areas off limits. No sales near schools. No kids in the crew. Control the chaos, he tells them. It works, for a while. Their operation becomes one of the largest on the East Coast. By 1986, they're reportedly moving $100,000 in product a week. Some say more. The money becomes surreal. One night, Azie tries to make a deposit. The bank teller stares at him like he's made of smoke. "You have how much in cash?" He chuckles, slides the bag closer. "Enough to buy your branch," but the joke doesn't land. Not with the suits watching him from across the room. He walks out before they can call in routine questions. Back in his apartment, he lays the bills out on his bed. Thousands of them. He stares. It looks like victory, but it feels like warning. And Harlem? Harlem is no longer clapping. It's whispering. Stories start circling. Other crews eye their territory. People they trusted begin disappearing. Arrests, quiet indictments, friends turning informants. Loyalty stretches thinner each month. And Azie? He keeps a gun in every room now. Not because he wants to, but because he has to. He can still walk through his old neighborhood, sure. People still respect him. Still nod. But now, the nods come with caution. With eyes that check for who's watching. With hearts that beat a little faster when he steps near. Power does that. And paranoia? It's the tax. Still, he keeps going. Because stopping now, that's a different kind of death. But deep inside, something in him has already started to shift. A whisper in the back of his mind says, "How long can you really keep this up?" And he doesn't have an answer. Not yet. Azie begins to notice the calendar more often. Not the way a birthday counts. Not holidays or anniversaries. No. He watches dates like he's tracking a silent countdown. Some fuse he can't quite see but knows is lit. Harlem's changed, and so is he. It's not just about moving weight anymore. It's about maintaining the illusion of control, of unity, of untouchability. The operation is vast now. Dozens of dealers, trusted stash house operators, clean cars, clean drivers. It moves like a corporation, not a corner crew. But corporations don't bleed when things go wrong. Crews do. And Azie's starting to see blood in places it doesn't belong. Cracks are forming. First at the edges. A missed drop here. A runner who doesn't answer for a day. Someone pocketing off the top. A girlfriend asking too many questions. These aren't dramatic betrayals. They're slow leaks. The kind that sink empires while kings are distracted by crowns. He tries to keep everyone focused. Weekly meetings, quiet talks on benches, reassurances that their system still works, that loyalty still means something. But even Rich is distracted. He's in deeper than ever with the fame, hosting parties that feel more like magazine spreads, champagne flowing, lights flashing, strangers laughing like they know him. Azie doesn't like it, not because it's loud, but because it's unguarded. He tells Rich, "You gotta slow down, people watching." Rich just laughs. Let 'em watch, they've been watching. But there's a difference between eyes on you for admiration and eyes watching to plot. Alpo's moving wild too. He's got new connections, new ideas, and he's not asking permission to pursue them. Sometimes he tells Azie and Rich after the fact. Sometimes not at all. They argue. Quietly, at first, then with sharper tones. But they always smooth it over. For now, because the money's still flowing, the product's still moving, and Harlem? Harlem's still listening. But so are the feds. They haven't made arrests, haven't kicked in doors yet. But the presence is there. Unmarked cars parked too long on the corner. Faces that don't belong in bodegas. Random stops that don't feel random. Azie notices all of it. And paranoia? It's no longer just the price. It's the mood. He starts taking different routes home every night. Starts carrying 2 phones. Stops answering numbers he doesn't recognize. Stops sleeping much at all. He tells himself it's smart, cautious, professional. But truthfully, he's tired. The kind of tired you don't feel in your muscles, but in your bones. In the weight behind your eyes when you close them and still see numbers, faces, betrayals lined up like dominoes. Then one night, sitting in his car outside a jazz lounge, Azie sees something that haunts him. A young boy, no older than 10, hands off a small bag to a man twice his size. No words, just an exchange. The man disappears, and the boy walks off like it's normal. And that's the problem. It is normal now. This isn't what Azie built for. He never wanted kids in the game. Never wanted the poison to become a language spoken before puberty. Back at his apartment, he pours himself a drink and doesn't touch it. Just stares. He thinks about the fire, the one that started it all. How it didn't ask questions. How it just burned. And how it left him watching every spark since, waiting for the next blaze. This empire? It feels like another blaze now. Just slower. Rich bursts in the next day, all energy and grins, talking about a new spot in Queens, new contacts in Jersey, some DJ who wants to spin at their next party. Azie doesn't even respond. He just watches him, and for the first time he wonders, how long until Rich flies too close to the sun? Many people still think that street empires fall because of snitches or stings, but the truth is, most collapse from within, because somewhere along the way, the mission changes from building something to maintaining something, and that's where cracks become fractures. Azie's operation is still running like clockwork, but the hands that turn the gears, they're tired, greedy, distracted. Some are just scared. He tries to rein it in. He cuts a few people loose, consolidates some roots, moves stash houses again, tells Alpo to chill with the flashy trips, asks Rich to cut back on the club nights. They all nod, say the right things, but Harlem doesn't lie. The corners whisper the truth, and the truth is, the control Azie once had is fraying. One of his closest runners vanishes, just disappears. No goodbye, no warning. Azie finds out later the guy got picked up in Queens with 3 bricks and started talking the moment the cuffs clicked. Damage control. Azie works fast, moves the weight, clears the house, pays off what he needs to pay. But something inside him shifts again. This isn't sustainable. He thinks about quitting. For the first time, really thinks about it. But how do you quit when your name is on 100 mouths? When your face is tied to 1,000 stories? Harlem wouldn't let him vanish quietly, and the feds definitely wouldn't. Still, the thought lingers. He begins to dream of other things. A business, a real one, maybe a clothing store, maybe even music. He's got taste, and taste sells, but those are dreams whispered in the shower. The world he lives in? It doesn't take kindly to dreams, and before he can even figure out a way out, something happens that makes the decision for him. A deal, a routine one. Easy, clean, until it isn't. Until the shots ring out. Until blood soaks fabric not meant to be stained. Until Azie's vision goes black. When Azie wakes up, it isn't to morning light or music on the radio. It's to hospital antiseptic, the dull throb of pain like a heartbeat in his bones, and the distant sound of someone whispering his name like it might break him further. He doesn't know how long he's been under. Later, he learns it's been nearly 2 weeks, 12 days in a coma, suspended somewhere between this world and whatever might lie past it. 7 bullets, 1 to the head, 1 to the neck, the others scattered like angry punctuation marks across his body. 7 shots, and he lived. The nurse says it like a miracle, like he's been blessed. But all Azie feels is the weight of why. The last thing he remembers is the deal. A re-up, simple. A meet with people he trusted, or thought he did. It wasn't even high risk, nothing special, which makes the betrayal sharper. He was set up, there's no question. Money was involved, sure, about $50,000. But this wasn't just about robbery. It felt like a message, a warning, or maybe a score settled by someone too scared to face him awake. He lies in that hospital bed with tubes in his arms and air thick in his lungs, and feels the game shifting under him, like cracked pavement. He can't move much, can't talk without pain. But his mind runs loops. Who set him up? Why now? Who knew about the deal? He replays every step, every face, every voice, like a film he's trying to edit differently. But the ending never changes. The visitors come in waves. His mother sits the longest. She never says, "I told you so." She doesn't need to. Her eyes say it every time she watches the heart monitor beep. Rich comes too. Not as often. His visits are shorter, clipped. He looks scared. Not just for Azie, but of Azie. Like maybe he sees, for the first time, how fragile their empire is. How one bullet can tear through the myth they built like it's tissue. Alpo? Doesn't show, not once. That says more than any words could. By the second week, Azie's breathing easier. By the third, he's sitting up. Doctors call him lucky. They don't understand how rare it is to leave that many wounds behind and still carry your own name. But luck doesn't feel like the right word. Not now. He starts thinking about things he never had time to think about before. Peace, for one. Silence. What it would mean to step out. To disappear. The money's still there. Hidden well. Untouched by blood for now. But it doesn't sing to him like it used to. It just sits in the back of his mind like a reminder of what almost cost him everything. And Harlem? Harlem reacts like Harlem always does. Fast and fickle. Rumors fly. Some say he died. Some say he's paralyzed. Others claim he faked the shooting to disappear with the stash. Every version of the story spreads faster than the truth. But the truth is this: Azie Faison, the mind behind one of Harlem's most efficient drug operations, is alive, barely. He returns home under a blanket of silence. No parties, no celebration, just the sound of locks clicking and blinds staying closed. His crew? Shaken. The shooting spooked everyone. Some already jumped ship. Others wait to see what Azie will do. He holds a meeting. Short, private. Only the most trusted. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't cry. He just says, "Things are different now. Move smarter. Or don't move at all." They nod, but he sees it in their eyes. The game moved on while he was down. People who once looked to him for orders now whisper about his weakness, about his exit, about whether the king still has his crown. And maybe they're right, because something inside Azie has changed. He doesn't want revenge. Not exactly. He wants distance, a different air. The kind you can breathe without checking mirrors every 10 seconds. He tries to walk the blocks again, just once, hoodie up, alone. The sun's low. Stores are closing. Music plays from windows above. The corner boys still nod, still recognize him. But there's a gap now, a beat missing in their rhythm. He's not them anymore. Not exactly. One of the old heads sees him and says, "Ain't nobody get hit like that and walk straight again." Azie just nods. Keeps walking. He understands what the man means. He's not talking about a limp. He's talking about the way trauma shifts your center of gravity. How trust becomes a luxury. How every sound feels louder, every silence too long. The paranoia, once useful, is now constant. He moves apartments, changes his number, shrinks his circle down to a sliver. He doesn't tell Rich or Alpo. Instead, he starts journaling. It's not fancy, not poetic, just notes, observations, lessons, warnings, a personal blueprint of how to rise and how not to fall. He's not thinking about publishing. Not yet. But he's starting to see something he never saw before. His story has value beyond the street. People might want to hear it, but not yet. First, he has to survive the next few months, because the storm isn't over. It's just moved closer. And Azie? He's watching the skies. Azie's healing, at least on the outside. His body moves. His face looks mostly the same, and the questions have slowed down. But he knows better. Healing isn't quiet. It's heavy. It hums beneath the skin like an echo. Especially when your life still sits too close to the trigger. Harlem hasn't changed much in his absence, but how he sees it has. The same streets feel narrower. The air feels denser. Every handshake feels measured now. Every nod suspicious. He keeps his steps light. Doesn't stay long in one place. Not because he's scared, because he's awake now. More than ever. One afternoon he gets a call. It's Rich. There's no small talk, no how you feeling, just business. A new shipment's ready. Good product, clean, big number. Azie hesitates. Count me out, he says quietly. A beat. Seriously? Dead serious. Rich doesn't argue. Not really. But the silence on the line? It's loaded. Like a chapter closing halfway through the sentence. They hang up, and just like that, Azie starts untangling himself from the empire he helped build. It doesn't happen overnight. You don't just wake up and walk away. You pull, gently, one thread at a time. Step back from operations. Let phone calls go unanswered. Pass responsibilities on, pretending it's delegation, not departure. He never says the words, "I'm done," but those around him hear it loud anyway. Not everyone likes it. Some see it as weakness. Others feel abandoned. A few wonder if Azie's seen something coming, something worse than a setup. And in a way he has, because Azie knows the game's rules. And right now, the game's playing a different tune. Rich keeps rising. His face is everywhere. Flashy cars, bigger parties, more eyes. It's like he's trying to prove he's untouched. But the higher you float, the clearer you show up on radar. Meanwhile, Alpo's moves grow reckless. He's crossing lines they used to treat like sacred, dealing with crews they once avoided, taking meetings in cities they swore to stay away from. Azie watches it all unfold like a spectator at a game he used to coach. He's not bitter, not angry, just distant. He takes his time healing, starts thinking beyond Harlem, beyond the hustle. He buys a car dealership, quietly. On paper, it's clean. A new start. Something to manage without the weight of corners or guns. It doesn't make as much. Not even close, but it feels better. At night, he scribbles in that journal again. This time, more intentionally. Mapping the rise and the fall. Not just the events, but the lessons. Because if nothing else, he wants the next generation to understand. Success built on fire burns fast. Then, in late '89, the unthinkable happens. Donald Porter, Rich's younger brother, is kidnapped. He's a kid, just 12 years old. The city stops. Harlem holds its breath. The kidnappers demand a ransom, a large one. Rumors fly. Some say it's a crew from Queens. Others point fingers closer to home. No one really knows. Azie watches from a distance. He reaches out once, offers support, whatever Rich needs. But Rich declines, says he's got it. Days pass. Then the body is found, shot, dumped, a child. And suddenly, the empire they built isn't just in trouble. It's cursed. Rich changes. The light in his eyes dims. The charisma turns sharp, almost brittle. He moves differently, trusts no one, talks less, sleeps even less. Azie sees him once after the funeral. They don't say much. Just a long stare across the street, like two ghosts remembering the same song. There's nothing to say, because that moment, that's the end of everything. Rich would only live a little longer after that, gunned down in his car, 24 years old. When Azie hears the news, he doesn't react. Not right away, he just sits and remembers the first handshake, the first scheme, the first real bag of money, The first moment they believed they could rule Harlem together. Then the first crack, the first betrayal, the first bullet, and now the first grave. He lights a candle. Not because he's religious, just because silence needs something to burn. Harlem keeps moving, but slower now. The corners talk softer. The flash has dimmed. The game doesn't feel like a game anymore. It feels like a trap. Alpo vanishes for a while, then reappears with new stories, new scars, and new enemies. Azie stays quiet, watches, learns, because this is what happens when you don't step away in time. Many people still think that Azie dropped out because of fear, that the bullet spooked him, the betrayal broke him. But what if he just saw further than the rest? What if walking away was the bravest move he ever made? So what do you think? Does quitting mean weakness or wisdom? In 1990, Azie's fully out. No more meetings, no more product, just distance and breath. But his name still lingers. On walls, in whispers, in old photos pinned to bulletin boards in precincts that still haven't caught up. He can't erase the past, but he can choose what he carries and what he lets go. The streets of Harlem never forget. Azie may be done with the game, but the game isn't done with him. Even as he keeps his head down, even as his hands stay clean, the shadows he once commanded still stretch long. Kids still say his name with a mixture of awe and mystery. Old heads nod when they hear it. Cops still wonder if he's really out or just playing a longer game. But he's done, really done. And that's harder than most people realize, because stepping away isn't just a decision. It's a discipline. Every day, he wakes up with fewer phone calls, fewer headlines, fewer eyes watching. But that doesn't mean peace. It just means quieter noise. He's in his early 20s now, but he feels decades older. Harlem feels different too. There's no center anymore. After Rich's death and Alpo's sudden rise and rumored fallouts, the scene fractured. The unity they once brought, even in chaos, is gone. Now it's dozens of small crews, young bucks with quick hands and no patience. Crack rules everything, and with it comes desperation that doesn't respect age or legacy. Azie watches it all like a man who once directed the play, now sitting in the back row, seeing every missed cue. He focuses on the car dealership. It's slow, painfully honest. Paper trails, customer complaints, loan approvals. But there's something comforting about its simplicity. Still, the past lingers. People stop by just to say hi. They always ask the same questions. You still got it? You thinking about getting back in? You know who's up next? Azie just smiles, says, "Nah, I'm good." And most of them walk away confused. Some shake their heads, thinking he's soft now. Others respect it. A few keep their distance, not because they fear him, but because they fear the reminder of what they've yet to survive. He's not trying to be a role model. That would be dishonest. But he is trying to be real. One afternoon, a teacher from a local high school comes into the dealership, says her students talk about him, says they saw a documentary snippet on Harlem's drug scene, and his name came up. She asks gently, "Would you talk to them?" Azie hesitates, then agrees. The first talk is awkward. He's not polished, no punchlines, no rehearsed message, just truth. He tells them about the fire, the corners, the money, the betrayal, the coma, the silence afterward. He watches their eyes, some skeptical, some wide, some pretending not to care, but listening anyway. He ends with, "Y'all think you want this life, but you don't. Not really. I had everything, and I still almost died for it. Twice." There's no applause, just a long pause, and somehow that feels louder. Word spreads. More schools call, more community centers. Someone even suggests writing a book. He laughs it off. He's no author, just a man with scars and a memory. But the idea doesn't fade. He begins sketching chapters, loose, raw, real, not to sell, not yet, just to get it out. Because for the first time, he realizes his story might matter. And then, Paid in Full happens, a Hollywood project. Loosely based on his life, on Rich, on Alpo. The streets buzz again. Everyone wants to know what Azie thinks. At first, he's cautious. Doesn't want his pain turned into popcorn. But he watches, and surprisingly, it's not terrible. Stylized, yes. Some facts stretched. Some pain softened. But it gets close. Close enough to stir something. He does interviews, quiet ones, measured. He says, I lived it. They acted it. But it's good people finally talking about what really happened. But fame, it knocks again. Old faces reach out. New ones try to stand beside him for clout. Suddenly, he's a name again. Just not for the reasons he used to be. And Azie? He walks carefully now, because he knows how fast admiration turns into assumption. How stories get stolen. How truth gets romanticized into something dangerous. He speaks often, but not everywhere. He chooses his moments, because Harlem's still watching. And while he's no longer king, he's become something else. A witness. A man who saw the peak and survived the fall. Not many can say that, and fewer still walk away with both lungs and a conscience intact. One afternoon, walking past 145th, he sees a group of teens posted up, dressed sharp, music playing low, the same hunger in their eyes he once had. One of them spots him. Yo, that's Azie, right? The others quiet down. One steps forward. You really used to run this block? Azie smiles. I didn't run nothing. I just borrowed it for a while. They laugh, half respectful, half unsure if he's serious. But they don't forget. Because legacy doesn't always look like statues. Sometimes it looks like a man walking past the ghosts of his past and nodding to the future without needing to own it. Harlem still breathes in rhythm, but now it exhales a different sound. The corners are younger. The cars flash brighter but stay parked shorter. The hustle is messier, more desperate, less deliberate. There's no Azie behind the curtain now. No quiet strategist shaping the tempo. What's left is noise, scattered and hungry. But Azie, he's in a different orbit. His days are filled with car lots, family visits, and community talks. He's far from invisible, especially after Paid in Full drops. But his name carries a different charge now. Not fear, not awe, just weight. Like something real. Something that actually happened. Sometimes when he's alone, he plays the old game in his head again. Not because he misses it, but to understand what it cost. He replays deals like chess games, watches faces that turned, remembers hands that shook before they betrayed, and he realizes something. He didn't just survive Harlem, he outlived it, at least the version that nearly killed him. Still, the past taps on his shoulder often. There are memorial murals now. Rich's face painted in color on a cracked brick wall. Candles placed below it on certain nights. Notes scribbled on the edges. Forever Harlem. Never forgotten. Azie stops by once, not to mourn, just to acknowledge. He stands there in silence, hands in his pockets, as a couple teens walk past. One of them sees him, stops mid-stride, and mutters something to his friend. That's him, the quiet one, the one who made it out. But how do you really make it out of something that shaped your entire youth? He walks a few blocks, finds an empty bench near Marcus Garvey Park, and sits. The trees move above like they're whispering old stories. Children scream and laugh nearby, dragging soccer balls and sticky fingers behind them. It's peaceful, something he once thought he didn't deserve. His phone buzzes. It's a young man from a local nonprofit, asking if Azie will come speak at their program's summer kickoff. The topic, surviving the streets without losing yourself. Azie exhales, smiles faintly. Yeah, he says, I'll come. The night of the event, the room is full. Folding chairs lined shoulder to shoulder, cheap pizza warming in boxes, kids too young to have seen the 80s, but somehow already fluent in survival. Azie walks up to the mic wearing a crisp button-down and jeans. Nothing flashy, just present. He begins with a story, not about the money or the violence, but about the fire. That old fire, how it almost took everything. How it was the first time he ever had to ask, what now? And then he bridges it, quietly, into the hustle, the rise, the empire, the coma, the regret. He doesn't glamorize it. He doesn't preach either. He just tells it, straight. A kid raises his hand. You ever wish you never did it? Azie pauses, then nods, every single day. But not because I regret the money or the risks. I regret the people who didn't get a second chance like I did. They sit with that for a moment. He doesn't say more, doesn't need to. Later that night, one of the older attendees comes up and says, You should be doing this full time. Azie nods. He's heard that before, and maybe they're right. But part of him knows some stories, when told too often, become diluted. He doesn't want to be just a cautionary tale. He wants to be proof that there's something after the caution. He's not chasing sainthood. He's chasing impact, so he keeps it simple. He speaks where it matters, writes when the moment moves him, mentors a few, stays off the radar otherwise. One afternoon, he meets an old friend for coffee, someone from the early days, one of the few who also made it out intact. They laugh over old names, trade quiet stories, shake their heads at how young and fearless they once were. You know, the friend says, we were kids building kingdoms in sand. Azie smiles, and the tide came in. The friend nods, and we're lucky to still be standing. He is. So is Azie. Many people still think that legacies are written in what you leave behind. But Azie, he's writing his every day, with what he doesn't do. No relapses, no comebacks, no headlines, just presence. Still in Harlem, still upright, still aware. And that's more powerful than any kingpin myth. He doesn't wear the title, but Azie moves like a king still, just not the kind who rules through fear or money. These days, his influence isn't measured in bricks or corners, but in quiet gestures. A word to a kid heading down the wrong path. A phone call returned at the right time. A favor done without needing repayment. He no longer has soldiers, but he has impact. And that runs deeper. He walks the streets now, not to watch over territory, but to remember. One afternoon, he passes the block where his crew first moved serious weight. The storefronts are different now. A chain pharmacy. A deli owned by a family who immigrated from West Africa. A hair-braiding spot where an old gambling den used to buzz at midnight. Nothing lasts, but everything echoes. He stops at the corner, pauses, and closes his eyes for a second. The image comes fast. Rich laughing as he counts money. Alpo leaning on a car with that crooked grin. Azie himself standing back, arms folded, already thinking 10 steps ahead. They were just kids, teenagers really, trying to rewrite their futures with powder and paper, never realizing how many pages would get burned in the process. Back then, he never thought about what came after, what life looked like past the crown. Now, he knows that this, the breathing, the reflection, the surviving, is the crown. He's not alone in that realization. A small network of former hustlers has formed over time. Not official, no organization, just nods exchanged between men who once played the game and somehow walked away without losing their minds. Some went to prison. Some found God. Some disappeared entirely. But a few, like Azie, chose to stay and transform the ground they once ruled. They meet occasionally, not in back rooms or clubs anymore, but community centers, barbershops, quiet cafes. No jewelry, no bodyguards, just stories, shared lessons, and memories they don't always want but can't afford to forget. In one of these gatherings, someone asks Azie, "What kept you alive, man? Out of all of us?" He thinks on it, sips his coffee. "Luck," he says. Then he adds, "And knowing when enough was enough." It sounds simple, but it wasn't, because quitting the game doesn't erase the temptation. There were offers, plenty of them. Quiet ones, big ones. Requests for partnerships, for protection, for connections, all promising quick stacks and no strings. But he knew better. Nothing in the game comes stringless. He's watched too many men take one last dip and never make it back to shore. So Azie stayed dry. He leaned deeper into mentorship. He's not flashy about it, just consistent. A community group in Brooklyn starts asking him to mentor young men caught up in gang court diversion programs. He goes once, then again. Eventually, it becomes a rhythm. They don't always listen, but they look. And that's enough. Eyes hold weight when words don't. One teen asks him, "What's the worst part of being you?" Azie doesn't blink. "Seeing people treat my past like a blueprint." The teen nods. "But you got rich." "Yeah," Azie replies, "and I almost died. Pick which part you want more." He lets that sit. No need to explain further. One thing Azie understands now is that presence changes perception. These kids need to see men who've been through fire and came out not bragging, but humble. So he shows up. Not perfect, not polished, but present. And that alone starts changing things. He finds himself dreaming again. Not in dollar signs or turf lines, but in outcomes. In peace. One night, sitting at home, he opens the journal again. The one that started in recovery. It's tattered now. Half full. Margins scratched with notes, underlines, names. He begins writing. Legacy isn't what you leave in your wallet. It's what people say about your choices after you're gone. I used to build with risk. Now I build with honesty. And it's slower, but it lasts longer. He stares at the page, then adds, "I still miss Rich sometimes. Not the street version. Just the kid, the smile, the loyalty before the noise. I wish he could have seen what came after." The next day, he prints out a few pages, leaves them anonymously at the front desk of the community center. No signature, just truth. The director later tells him the teens passed it around like a mixtape. Read every word. He doesn't say much, just nods and walks out into the soft Harlem evening. The sun's dipping behind the skyline. The streets are busy, but they hum, not roar. For a brief moment, Azie feels something rare, stillness. And in that stillness, he realizes he no longer carries the game on his shoulders, just the lessons. And those are light enough to bear. By now, Azie Faison has become something Harlem rarely produces. A man who lived through the fire, stepped back from the edge, and never jumped again. That alone is a kind of fame. Not the loud kind, not the movie kind, but the kind whispered between barbershop chairs, across Sunday stoops, or in quiet father-to-son talks when the question is asked, who really made it out? Azie's name always makes the list, but even now he doesn't see himself as special. He walks the same blocks he once ruled like a regular man, nodding to store owners, stopping to talk to kids who recognize him not for the empire he built, but for the silence he keeps, because he's still here. And in Harlem, survival is its own badge. He's not blind to what still lurks. The game never left. It just changed uniforms. The faces are different, but the rhythm is familiar. Pills instead of powder, clicks instead of corners, social media replacing whispers. The hustle just moved digital, and sometimes, as he scrolls through stories of teenage dealers flexing wads of cash and guns online, Azie shakes his head. Not in judgment, in grief, because he sees their eyes. and he remembers his. He knows exactly what they think they're building. He also knows how fast it all comes apart. A documentary crew reaches out next. They want to do a full-length feature on his life. The real story, they say, beyond the movie. He agrees, but only on one condition. No glamour. They nod. But when the first cut of the footage comes back, there's slow-motion shots of money stacks, dramatic music over reenactments, shadows cast like mythology. He shuts it down, says, if you want drama, go shoot a gangster film. If you want truth, then show a man trying to keep his conscience clean. The producers balk, say they want to honor the story. But Azie's not interested in honor through distortion. He walks, again, because now he understands his story doesn't need cinematic glitter. It needs clarity. And so, instead of a documentary, he starts giving talks again, this time at Rikers Island. He's invited to speak to a group of young men awaiting trial, some facing short bids, others looking at years. The room is tense, the air thick with ego, pain, and the kind of silence that's only broken by permission. Azie walks in slowly. He's not dressed like a motivational speaker. No suit, just jeans, sneakers, and a black hoodie. No performance, just presence. He starts without a script. Y'all ever sat in a room and thought about what your life would have looked like if one day, just one, went different? No one responds, but a few eyes lift. He continues. I made a lot of money. I wore the nicest clothes, rode through Harlem like I owned it. And I still ended up shot, betrayed, and broken. A pause. I got lucky. But don't make luck your plan. The silence shifts. One young man leans forward. Another uncrosses his arms. By the end of the hour, they're asking questions. Not about the money, about regret, about what's next. And that's the shift Azie lives for. He leaves Rikers lighter. Not because he changed everyone's life, but because someone in that room heard him. That's enough. He's learned that change isn't explosive. It's quiet, like water on stone. You don't see the shift until you look back and realize the shape's different. Later that year, he helps launch a program aimed at helping formerly incarcerated men re-enter society. Job placements, housing assistance, skills training, no billboards, no press releases, just work. He shows up to the meetings in person, helps with paperwork, uses his connections to create opportunity. Some people are surprised. You don't need to be here, they say. But Azie just smiles. I do. Because for him, redemption isn't something you earn once. It's something you maintain. One slip, one cut corner, and you're back in the spiral. So he keeps steady. Many people still think that once you've done wrong, your path is set. That the street writes your ending in ink. But Azie? He's proof that the pen was never theirs to hold. So what do you think? Can a man outrun his own legend? Or is the real triumph learning to redefine it? Azie doesn't need the answer today. He just needs to keep walking. One more block, one more room, one more chance to turn the old story into something that saves instead of stains. And Harlem? Harlem notices. Even if it doesn't always clap, it watches. Because the man who once set the city's rhythm now walks with a different kind of power. Quiet, steady, and still moving forward. It's a rainy Tuesday when Azie walks into the classroom at Frederick Douglass Academy. The bell has already rung, but the kids inside aren't restless. They're curious. Some have seen Paid in Full. Others just heard the name from older cousins or uncles who speak of Azie like a legend. Half fact, half myth. But today, he's not on screen. He's right there in front of them. A real man. No entourage. No sunglasses. No ego. He writes one word on the whiteboard. Exit. Then turns to them. Everyone talks about the hustle, the money, the come-up, he says. But almost nobody talks about the exit strategy. A few nod. Most just watch. Phones are out, sneaky under desks. But he doesn't care. Let them record. Let them remember. He talks about the art of walking away, how it's not weakness to leave, it's skill, timing, awareness. He says, the game don't end when you win. It ends when you survive. By now, He's said this message 100 times, but it still lands different in rooms like this. These are the kids on the edge. Some already have a foot in. Others are still debating if they should test the water. And here's Azie, proof of what's on the other side. Not a mansion, not a yacht, but peace, breath, a second chance. He finishes the talk with a question. You ever seen a 17-year-old with $30,000 and no clue how to live? He has. He was one. When he leaves, one kid follows him outside, hoodie up, eyes scanning the street. You think if Rich had lived, he'd have changed too. Azie stops. He wants to say yes, but the truth is heavier. I think he would have tried, he says. But sometimes trying ain't enough. You gotta survive the noise first. The kid nods, says nothing else. Just turns and walks off, like he's been handed something invisible but real. That night, Azie pulls an old duffel bag out of his closet. Not for nostalgia, just to make sure it's still there. Inside, a few stacks of untouched cash from years ago, still wrapped. A gold chain he stopped wearing the day Rich died. A notebook filled with names. Some crossed out, some circled. All ghosts. He sits with it, not because he misses the past, but because the past is still his. No one ever really walks away from that life. They just learn to walk with it, without letting it lead. Some days, the memories hit like a sting. Like when he hears a certain beat from a passing car that reminds him of 145th in the summer. Or when he smells that burnt sugar scent of crack lingering in a stairwell. Other days, it's soft. A reminder that he's still here. That he said no when the world expected yes. He's gotten better at saying no. No to quick money. No to shortcuts. No to the illusion that you can dip your toe back in and not get pulled under. But saying yes, that's new. He says yes to quiet, to reflection, to doing small things right. He says yes to mentoring a kid who just beat a juvenile case and doesn't know how to talk to his father again. He says yes to his sister, asking if he'll come to her daughter's school play, just to sit in the audience like any other uncle. He says yes to uncomfortable truths in interviews, and most surprisingly, he says yes to writing. Not just journaling anymore. Actual writing. A memoir, rough and honest. No ghosts hiding in metaphor. No fiction spun into legend. He titles the manuscript Paid in Lessons. He keeps it on a flash drive, tucked behind a picture of his mother in the living room. He's not rushing to release it. The world can wait, because right now, he's still writing the ending. One afternoon, while walking through Jackie Robinson Park, he passes a group of teens huddled around a Bluetooth speaker, freestyling. One of them breaks off and says, "Yo, you Azie?" Azie stops, smirks. Depends who's asking. The teen laughs. "Nah, for real. You the one from the movie?" "Kind of," Azie says. "But that was a character. I'm just the real one trying to stay real." He offers a fist bump. They shake it, then go back to rapping. As Azie walks on, he smiles. There's a rhythm in the city still. One he doesn't control. One he doesn't need to. Many people still think that redemption is soft, that once you've lived hard, you're supposed to die hard too. But what do you think? Can surviving quietly be the most rebellious thing of all? Azie does, and so he keeps walking. With less noise and more meaning. The smell of blacktop after a summer rain hits different in Harlem. It's part memory, part signal. Like the streets are rinsing themselves for another round of everything they've already survived. Azie stands on the steps of a brownstone watching it all. The same energy as before, but dulled in places. Gentrification has touched the neighborhood. Coffee shops where dice games used to be. Art galleries where crack vials once crunched under timberlands. But if you know where to look, the game is still alive. And Azie knows exactly where to look. He sees it in the way two teens on the corner exchange backpacks without a word. He sees it in the new brands, the unspoken codes, the handshakes that mean more than hellos. And it makes him pause. Because for all the change, buildings, businesses, buzzwords, some cycles still spin with perfect rhythm. He could ignore it, could just walk away, but he doesn't. Instead, he leans in. There's a kid named Jalen he's been mentoring for 6 months. 17. Smart, sharp, a little too sharp sometimes. Got caught up moving pills for a crew based out in the Bronx. Beat the case on a technicality, but the next one won't fall in his favor. Azie sees himself in Jalen, not just in the ambition, but in the ache, that silent craving for control, for significance. Something the world doesn't give kids like them for free. They meet every Saturday. No curriculum, no speeches, just walks. Sometimes they talk about life. Other times, silence is the lesson. One afternoon, Jalen asks, "You ever miss it?" Azie doesn't lie. Some parts. Which parts? He thinks. Not the money, not the fear, just the clarity. When you're in the game, everything's simple. Win or lose, eat or starve. You don't get that kind of focus in a regular life. Jalen nods slowly. Yeah, I get that. Then Azie adds, but regular life? That's where peace lives. And peace takes practice. They walk a little further before Jalen mutters, "I don't think I've ever had peace." Azie stops. Then let's start figuring out what it looks like. That's how it works now. One soul at a time. He's not saving Harlem. He knows that. He's just adjusting the temperature in rooms that would have been freezing without him. Sometimes people still call him OG. It makes him wince. Not because it's untrue, but because original gangster doesn't hold the weight it used to. Too many people claim it. Too many miss the point. Azie prefers a quieter title now. Just uncle. That's a neighborhood uncle. A presence. One who doesn't yell, doesn't judge, just shows up. And showing up is powerful, especially in a world where consistency is rare. One morning, he visits a juvenile detention center outside the city. The counselor there says a few of the kids already know who he is. One of them even printed his old picture from Paid in Full and keeps it in a notebook like scripture. Azie sits in a circle with 10 boys, ages ranging from 13 to 17. Eyes hard, but not closed. You can tell they've been disappointed too often to show trust too early. He tells them the truth about the fear, about watching friends die with their eyes open, about the hospital beeps that woke him from his coma, about his mother's tears, about how it never felt like winning, not really. And then he pulls out something unexpected. His first pay stub from the car dealership. Laminated, folded at the corners, faded ink. He passes it around. That, he says, was the first money I made clean. And I swear to you, it felt heavier than all the street money I ever counted. The kids go quiet. Not because it's flashy, because it's real. He tells them, "You don't have to die to leave the game. You just gotta decide you're worth more than your next charge." On the way out, one of the boys taps his arm. "Thanks for not coming in here like you were better than us." Azie nods, because he's not. He's just further down the road. That evening, he eats dinner alone. Bodega sandwich, root beer, back patio, soft jazz on low. He pulls out a notebook. Not the old one, a new one. Fresh pages. He writes, "Peace doesn't announce itself. It whispers, and most of us are too loud to hear it. And then, if you made it out, you owe more than silence." He doesn't post it online, doesn't hashtag it, just writes. Because legacy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's what doesn't happen. No arrests, no headlines, no mothers crying, no candles on street corners. Sometimes it's just a man sitting in the quiet, writing to a future that may never thank him out loud. But that's fine, because Azie Faison doesn't need applause. He just needs to keep walking and make sure someone else has a path to follow. Autumn rolls into Harlem with a quiet hush. Leaves skitter across sidewalks like memories too restless to stay put. The air cools, sharpens, and the city's rhythm slows just enough for the past to breathe through the cracks. Azie feels it. He walks these blocks wrapped in layers now. Hoodie beneath jacket, collar flipped up against the wind. His steps are slower, more reflective, not from age, but from practice. From learning that stillness doesn't mean weakness, it means control. He passes 139th and Lenox, an intersection thick with old ghosts. A corner once electric with movement, now softened by time and city planning. There's a juice bar where an old stash house used to be, where heat once radiated from tension and drug traffic. Now comes warm greetings and vegan smoothies. He chuckles at the irony. Progress Harlem style. A young man spots him from a bench nearby. Maybe early 20s, hoodie low, book in hand, but barely being read. He stands. Yo, you're Azie, right? Azie offers a nod. You mind if I ask something? Azie gestures to the space beside him. The kid sits, fidgeting slightly. He's nervous, respectful. How did you know when it was time to leave? Azie pauses, looks up at the fading sun, then back at the kid. You don't ever know. You feel it, like something in your bones telling you the story's about to flip pages with or without you. The kid nods slowly. You scared? Azie shrugs. Terrified, but not of dying, of wasting time. The words hang there heavy, because that's what nobody tells the up-and-comers. The money is fast, sure, but the time, the youth, the freedom, the relationships, you never get those back once they're spent. He asks the kid's name. Jordan, you working? Azie asks. Trying to? Azie pulls a card from his wallet. Just a contact, no title. Call me Monday. I'll see what I can line up. Jordan nods wide-eyed. For real? Azie nods. Nothing flashy, just honest. It's not the first time he's done that. Probably won't be the last. He keeps a short list of business owners he trusts. Mechanics, barbers, janitorial supervisors, folks who give second chances if someone shows up on time and stays sober. He used to think his legacy would be counted in kilos or cash. Now, it's phone calls like that. Back home, Azie checks the notebook again. He's been shaping the paid-in lessons manuscript quietly. Not for fame, but for the right moment. Maybe a limited release. Maybe just a series of talks. He's not in a rush. He reads back a section he wrote the night before. We wore armor made of pride, drove through fire expecting not to burn, and called survival a victory. But the real flex? Leaving the fire without needing to return to prove you made it. He scribbles a note beside it. Turn this into a lesson plan, because schools have been asking, not just in Harlem. Queens, Newark. Even a teacher from Chicago reached out last month, heard about him through a podcast, said the students were using paid in full in a media literacy unit and wanted the real voice. That phrase sticks with him, the real voice, because the movie showed flash, stylized betrayal, cool jackets, sharp fades, fast cars. But the real voice? It's quieter, more patient, less interested in cinema, more interested in consequence. He's not against the film. He even respects it in places. But it didn't tell everything. And the parts it did tell, those weren't the whole man. He remembers seeing it in the theater, slouched in the back, hoodie up, sunglasses on even inside. People cheered at the wrong moments, laughed at pain, clapped at the shootouts like they were ball games, and Azie sat through all of it. Didn't move, didn't speak, just watched a version of himself he barely recognized do things he remembered all too well. When the credits rolled, someone near the front stood and said, "That was real life right there." Azie thought, no, that was a highlight reel. Real life is waking up with survivor's guilt. Real life is visiting your friend's grave more than your own family. Real life is seeing a kid wear your face on a t-shirt, but not knowing your truth. That's why he keeps showing up, why he keeps talking, not because he enjoys it, but because someone has to tell it right. One evening, he meets with a small film crew, different from the earlier group. They're making a documentary series on transformation. Not crime, not legacy, just people who pivoted. Azie agrees, on one condition. I don't want a soundtrack under my words. They blink. I want people to hear them. No strings, no piano, just voice. They nod. The shoot is intimate, simple. One mic, one chair, one truth. He tells the story, front to back. The fire, the corners, the money, the bullets, the silence, and the walking away. When they ask him if he regrets anything, he says, I regret the people who didn't get the chance to make this choice. Then adds, and I regret thinking that respect had to come with fear. The crew goes quiet. One of them, barely out of college, says softly, I wish my brother could have heard this. Azie just nods. He doesn't need applause or tears. He just needs the message to land somewhere. That night, he walks home under streetlights flickering gold across wet pavement. Harlem hums behind him. Different, yet familiar. He doesn't own it. Never really did. But now it doesn't own him either. And that's peace. The mornings come earlier now. Azie wakes before the alarm. Not from stress, but out of habit. The kind you develop when you've lived long enough to know time doesn't wait. The sun is just a pale outline behind the skyline, casting soft light over the kitchen window as he pours his first cup of coffee. He keeps the blinds halfway drawn, not out of paranoia anymore, but because part of him still likes to keep the world a little filtered. He's learned to enjoy the silence. It's not the suspicious silence he once felt in stash houses, where quiet meant someone was watching, or worse. It's the kind of silence earned after too many loud years, a stillness you fight for. His days are slow but full. The car dealership runs itself mostly now. A young manager, Devin, mid-30s, sharp, respectful, handles the daily grind. Devin knows the past but never asks about it. That's how Azie likes it. But even with the dealership stable, Azie never lets himself coast. He's turned his attention more and more to the youth workshops he helped build. The name of the initiative? Second Vision. He chose it because too many young people never get a first vision, just the default one handed to them by poverty, pressure, and illusion. Second Vision is about the pause, the breath, the alternate route. Every week, he meets with new groups, some from juvenile programs, others from local schools, and a few from parole-mandated community service. No suits, no whiteboards, just open space and a few hard truths. He starts each session the same way. I don't care what you did. I care what you do now. Some come in defensive, arms folded, faces hard, but eventually the stories begin to flow. And when Azie listens, he doesn't just hear echoes, he hears variations. The details change, but the beat is the same. A need for control, a craving for respect, and an allergy to being dismissed. He understands all of it. One session, a boy named Zaire challenges him. You had money, fame. Why'd you give that up for this boring life? The others chuckle. Azie doesn't. Instead, he says, because every dollar I made in the street cost me triple in blood, sleep, and guilt. And the price went up every year. Zaire quiets down. The next week, he's the first one to show up. Azie notices. That's how change looks. Not dramatic, not instant, just different decisions. Later that month, Azie attends a community summit. Civic leaders, activists, ex-offenders, even a few elected officials. The theme, building bridges back. He's asked to speak. He doesn't prepare a speech. He never does. When it's his turn, he walks up, adjusts the mic, and looks out at the crowd. You don't fix a broken neighborhood with grants and slogans, he begins. You fix it by rebuilding trust. One kid, one door, one hard conversation at a time. A few nods, a few mumbled amens. He continues. And don't ask people to put down guns if you're not ready to give them something else to hold. Afterward, a councilwoman pulls him aside. She says she wants to back Second Vision with funding. Azie listens, thanks her, but says one thing clearly: I'm not turning it into a non-profit just to satisfy paperwork. This isn't about branding. It's about real breath-to-breath work. If the money helps, great, but I'm not changing what it is. She respects that. So does her assistant, young, sharp, wide-eyed. Reminds Azie of himself, but with better odds. On the train ride home that evening, he watches the city blur by. Brick and steel, murals and shadows. Places that once knew his name now barely blink as he passes. He prefers it that way. There's something sacred about being unfamous, to walk without performance, to live without echo. At home, his niece, 10 years old, full of life, calls him from the living room. Wants help with a school project on community heroes. Can I write about you? She asks. He chuckles. Depends on what kind of hero you're talking about. She shrugs. Just someone who helps. He thinks about that. About all the people who once called him boss or king or savior. Words that always came with weight. But helper? That's clean. That's human. He nods. All right, but only if you spell my name right. She grins and gets to work. Later that night, he's back at his notebook. He writes, they called us dealers. But we were really dreamers with poor timing and worse maps. Then underlines it twice. Because if that sentence ever made it into a book, he wanted it to be heard clearly. He looks out the window again. The moon is out, low and wide over Harlem. It doesn't judge. It just watches. And Azie? He's no longer looking up, wondering if he's missed his destiny. He's living it, one honest day at a time. Sunday mornings come with a kind of softness Azie never takes for granted. No alarms, no noise. Just sunlight breaking lazily through the blinds, the distant murmur of a radio 2 apartments over playing gospel, and the sound of the city yawning into its own rhythm. He stands in the kitchen barefoot, pouring coffee, watching steam rise like memory. There's no chaos anymore. No phones buzzing with re-up requests. No knocks at the door that make his pulse jump. No need to check the peephole twice. And yet, some reflexes never truly leave. He keeps a second lock on his door, though no one's come for him in years. He sits facing the room, never with his back to the entrance. Not out of fear, but from the habit of survival, old instincts, still sharp, just quieter. Today he's scheduled to speak at a community church. Not a sermon, just a talk. It's one of those old brownstone churches with worn pews and hand fans that double as programs. The kind of place where your name spreads faster than your words. He arrives early. The pastor greets him at the door, firm handshake, warm smile. We're grateful you're here, Brother Faison. You carry something heavy, but the way you carry it helps lighten others. Azie nods. Words like that used to slide off him. Now, they stay. Not because he needs praise, but because it reminds him that presence alone is power. Inside, the crowd is mixed. Elders, teens, young men in hoodies shifting in their seats. Mothers with folded arms, eyes sharp with concern. He stands behind the podium, clears his throat, and begins. Not with a story, but a confession. I never wanted to be a role model. I wanted to survive. The role came later, after the bruises, after the losses, after the silence. He speaks about responsibility, not as a lecture, but as an inheritance. Every choice I made back then felt necessary. But now, I realize how many people paid for those choices who never made them. The church stays still. Not a cough, not a rustle, just listening. He ends by pointing out 3 boys near the back. Young, distracted, clearly pulled into church that morning by worried grandmothers. I know that look, he says. You're not here because you want to be. That's okay. Just promise yourself this. Don't make decisions that trap you in someone else's version of strength. After the service, one of the boys waits for him outside. Doesn't say much, just lifts his chin and says, respect. Azie nods. That's all that needs saying. Later, walking through a small park nearby, He remembers something Rich once said, half joking, as they sat on a rooftop watching the city blink below them. "You think this street loves us back, bro?" Azie never answered then. He didn't know. But now he does. The street doesn't love or hate. It remembers. It keeps your name warm or cold depending on how you left it. And Azie? He left it better than he found it. That evening, back home, he cooks a simple meal. Fish, rice, steamed greens. The kind of dinner that feels like stability. Like time doing you a favor instead of chasing you down. He calls his sister. Checks on his niece. Tells her he wants to come to the next school event, not just the big ones. She laughs. Says he's turning soft. He smiles. Says maybe softness isn't weakness after all. After dinner, he sits on his stoop. No agenda, just being. A neighbor walks by with a baby in a stroller. They exchange nods. A car drives past playing a Nas track, something from the Illmatic days. He hears the lyrics drift. "I never sleep, 'cause sleep is the cousin of death." Azie used to believe that. Now, he knows sleep is survival. Rest is resistance. Peace is a revolution of its own. The city settles deeper into evening. Windows glow. Distant sirens wail. Laughter echoes down the block. And Azie? He closes his eyes, not because he's escaping, but because for once he can. The seasons turn again, and Harlem wears winter like an old coat. Heavy, frayed at the edges, but full of stories. Snow dusts the rooftops. Corner stores keep their heat up high, and their doors barely open. Steam rises from manholes, and old men huddle near bodegas, sipping coffee that tastes more like routine than flavor. Azie walks slower now, not from age, but to notice more. He watches kids drag sleds over sidewalks that once hosted dope sales. He sees boot prints mark paths he used to run down in fear or in haste. And every few blocks, he hears the echoes, faint but unmistakable, of a city that once knew him by a different name. He's past the point of being recognized daily. Now it happens occasionally, by people who know, who remember, not from movies but from real life. One afternoon, he ducks into a diner on 125th just to warm up. He orders the same thing he always does: black coffee, 2 eggs, wheat toast. A man at the far booth lifts his head, mid-40s, weathered eyes. "You Azie?" Azie doesn't flinch. "Depends." The man chuckles. "I used to run under Buck from the Bronx, back in '88. Heard your name more times than I heard my own." Azie nods once. That's enough. The man gets up. No drama, no awkward nostalgia. Just offers his hand. "I'm glad you made it, man." "I'm glad you did too," Azie replies. They don't need to talk further. Sometimes survival is the only introduction that matters. That night, Azie sits at his desk, reviewing his notes for an upcoming roundtable with educators and social workers. The topic? How to break cycles before they start. He reads over the list of talking points, data, statistics, intervention models. Then he scribbles something across the top of the page. Asks them when they last listened. Not instructed, not warned, not corrected. Just listened. Because that's the piece most people miss. Everyone wants to save kids, but few know how to sit with them in silence first. Azie's learned the power of that. He remembers one boy, 15 maybe, who never spoke during group sessions, just stared at the floor. Then one day, out of nowhere, the kid muttered, "I saw my brother die in front of me. I ain't cried since." No one said anything, not even Azie. They let the silence carry the weight. And that boy, he started showing up early after that, staying late, talking, writing. Sometimes healing starts where words stop. The round table goes well. Azie speaks plainly. No fluff, no slides, just truth. He tells them, "You want to stop these kids from selling poison? Show them what it feels like to matter in a room without needing to prove something." A few educators nod, others look unsure. He's used to that. Not everyone can translate street wisdom into boardroom strategy, but some do get it, and that's enough. After the meeting, a young woman, fresh out of grad school, idealistic eyes, approaches him. You ever think about teaching full-time? Azie smiles. I teach all the time, just not in a classroom. Still, her question lingers. Teaching, not just speaking, not just sharing, but shaping minds. Could that be the next chapter? He doesn't answer it that night. Instead, he visits a friend's home, Thomas, an old acquaintance from the early days. They once shared suppliers, nearly crossed wires too many times. But time made them brothers of experience. Thomas is older now, walks with a cane, lives quietly, reads a lot. They sip tea, watch basketball with the sound low. At halftime, Thomas asks, "You happy, Z?" Azie pauses. It's not a question he hears often. "Yeah," he says slowly. "Not always comfortable, but always grateful." Thomas nods. "That's rare, man, especially for us." They toast with chipped mugs. Azie heads home just before midnight. Harlem half asleep. Wind biting through his coat. He passes a mural. His mural. Someone painted it 2 years ago without asking. Just his face, soft shadows behind him. The words, "Peace is the real hustle." He didn't like it at first. Felt like too much. But tonight it fits. He stops, looks at it under the streetlight. Snow starting to fall again. Not heavy, just enough. And he realizes he doesn't need the world to understand him. He just needs the kids coming up behind him to see him. Alive, grounded, and walking forward. Still, there are places Azie no longer visits. Not because he's afraid. He passed that threshold long ago. It's because some places carry too much weight, and not all of it is history. Some of it is grief still wet behind the ears. One of those places is the building where Rich Porter was gunned down. He's never been back since the day after the shooting. That morning, the air was thick with sirens and cigarette smoke. People stood outside like statues, mouths tight, eyes red. The chalk outline had already faded under a light rain, but everyone still knew exactly where it had been. They didn't need markers. Pain remembers on its own. But today, Azie goes. He doesn't know why. No anniversary, no press. Just a feeling. A pull. The building is still there. Renovated, clean bricks, secure entrance. Harlem has changed its clothes, but beneath the fabric, the pulse is familiar. He doesn't walk inside, just stands across the street, remembers how Rich used to laugh from that third-floor window. How they'd make plans over slices of pizza, half-serious ideas about going legit, opening a club, maybe even starting a label. They had the money, but not the timing. He closes his eyes and offers no prayer, just a breath. Sometimes that's the closest thing to peace. Later that afternoon, he visits an old friend, Monique, one of the few women from their era who didn't just survive, but thrived. She's a social worker now, runs a program for young women who've aged out of the foster system. They sit on her brownstone steps, sipping herbal tea like it's summer in the 90s again. "You still writing?" she asks. "Yeah, not sure what it's turning into, but something." She nods. "You ever think about writing fiction?" He smirks. "Real life's already been stranger than fiction, but fiction lets you give the ending you wanted, not just the one you got." He sits with that. That night, he opens the manuscript again. Paid in Lessons now stretches over 200 pages. Not chronological, just truths, reflections. Wounds reopened and stitched again in ink. He writes a new entry titled, "The Quiet Funeral." There are people we never got to bury properly, not just in a grave, but in us. Their memories sit upright in the corners of our minds, waiting for closure that doesn't exist. But sometimes, survival is the funeral. The life we live becomes their eulogy. He leans back and exhales. Some nights are like this, not heavy, just full. Outside, the city is gentle, wind whispering against the windows, Harlem's breath steady. And then the call comes, private number. He never answers those. But something makes him pick up. It's Alpo's cousin. They talk for less than 2 minutes. The news is quiet, brutal, unsurprising. Alpo's dead, shot in Washington Heights. Just like that. No chase, no movie ending. Just steel and silence. Azie doesn't speak for a long time after hanging up. He walks to the window, watches the city, the streets that raised them all. He thinks about what they were. 3 young men, barely shaving, dreaming in fire and steel, rewriting Harlem's rhythm with powder and charm. The triangle that once seemed unbreakable. Now 2 corners are gone. Only he remains, still here, still walking, still telling. He pours a glass of water. No toast, no tribute, just memory. In the morning, he's asked by a local reporter to comment on Alpo's death. He declines, then sends a message through someone he trusts. No comment. But tell them he was more than the headlines. He was a man, and like all men, complicated. Because that's the truth. They were kids trying to be kings, and in doing so, became both legends and lessons. And Azie? He doesn't need revenge. He doesn't need to rewrite the story. He just needs to finish it honestly. That evening, he gives a guest lecture at a small college. The students have studied Paid in Full and dissected its cultural significance. But what they really want to know is how he feels now about the movie, about the legacy, about Rich, about Alpo. He doesn't dodge. He says, I feel lucky. Not because I was smarter, but because something pulled me back before the noise got too loud. You can't hear your future if all you listen to is echoes. Someone asks if he has regrets. He says, I have gravity. That's heavier than regret. It's what keeps me grounded. And when it's over, they stand. Some applaud. Others just nod, like they understood something they didn't have words for. That night, he walks home in the cold, not rushed, not afraid, just aware of how far he's come and how far he still intends to go. Snow piles at the edges of the sidewalks now, hardened into gray ridges by footsteps and city grime. Harlem in February is a different kind of cold, one that doesn't just press against your skin, but tries to slip into your chest, into your memories. Azie doesn't mind the cold. It slows everything down, gives the city a rhythm closer to his own. These days, he moves with the kind of calm you earn only by having lived too fast too young. The calm of someone who doesn't chase moments anymore. He lets them come to him. He's sitting in a small cafe tucked between 127th and Madison, one of the few places that still plays old soul music on vinyl. Curtis Mayfield's voice floats through the speakers like a distant conversation. He's meeting with 2 young filmmakers. They want to do a docu-series. Not about his street days, but about his second life. They're different from the last wave. No glossy intentions. No plans for dramatic reenactments. Just voices, interviews, and cityscapes. Real. Azie listens. Asks smart questions. Then leans back and says, I'll do it. But it ends in the classroom, not the courtroom. You get me? They nod. They do get him. That's becoming more common now. People understand the mission, not the myth. The project is called Legacy in Real Time. Not a retrospective, a pulse check. A way to show what healing looks like when you carry ghosts and gratitude in the same pocket. Over the next few weeks, they follow him to workshops, to classrooms, to the back office of the dealership, where he still reviews invoices and quietly offers second chances to men with records no other employer will touch. The camera captures moments most overlook. Him sitting on a stoop with a teenager in trouble, trading silence and understanding. Him helping a young woman practice interview questions in a community center hallway. Him hugging a grieving mother who lost her son to the game Azie once helped glorify. They ask him one day if he forgives himself. He takes a long pause before answering. I'm not sure forgiveness is a destination. I think it's a discipline. Some mornings I wake up lighter. Some nights I don't. but I try to live in a way that honors the people who never got the second chapter I did." That quote ends up in the trailer. They send it to him for approval. He watches it alone, lights dimmed, volume low. When the final frame fades to black, he sits in the silence for a long time before whispering to himself. That's the truth. The series is released on a small streaming platform. No viral push, no red carpet. But within weeks it starts spreading. Not with clicks, but with conversations. Teachers use it in classrooms. Mentors play it in juvenile halls. It doesn't glamorize. It doesn't excuse. It just tells. And that, somehow, is what people needed. One night, Azie receives a letter, handwritten, neat. It's from a young man in Arizona. "I watched your story. I didn't think people like you told the truth. But you did. And because of that, I'm putting this game down. Today." It's not the first letter, but it hits him like it is. He folds it, places it inside a shoebox with others, tapes the lid shut again. There must be 30 or 40 by now. All of them some version of, "I was headed down the same road. You helped me stop." He doesn't show them to anyone, not even Monique. They're his private victories. Quiet proof that legacy is not what you leave behind when you die. It's what you offer while you're still breathing. He takes a walk the next morning. Cold air in his lungs. Harlem still asleep. No rush. As he walks past Marcos Garvey Park, he notices something new. On a wall near the basketball courts, someone scrawled a quote in spray paint. No tag, no artist name. Just 6 words. Peace is louder when it's earned. He stops, smiles, takes a photo with his flip phone. Maybe someone heard one of his talks. Maybe someone just felt it. Either way, it lands. Later that day, he's back in a high school gymnasium. Bleachers half full, kids restless, arms folded, waiting for something they don't expect to care about. Azie steps up to the mic. He doesn't raise his voice. He just begins. "Y'all ever been so broke you stopped dreaming?" Heads shift. Eyes lift. "I was there, before the money, before the guns, before the names. And the truth is, I didn't sell drugs because I hated the law. I sold them because I hated feeling invisible." Now they're listening, because someone finally said the thing nobody puts in textbooks. He ends 20 minutes later. No lecture, just a closing sentence. If you walk away from this talk and make one decision different than you would have yesterday, then I didn't waste your time, and you didn't waste your life. One student claps, then another, then the room does. Not loud, but steady. That night, he writes one more line in his notebook. "The echoes I hear now are softer, but they're mine, and that's enough." Spring creeps in slow and shy, but Harlem begins to thaw. Azie walks the long way home more often now. No headphones, no phone in hand. Just the sounds of the city doing its thing. Buses hissing at stops. Basketballs bouncing in the distance. Stoop laughter in short bursts. He feels each day as a small victory, not because anything grand happens, but because nothing bad does. That in itself, for a man with his past, is a luxury. And yet peace is not passive. It's an effort. Every morning, Azie rises early, reviews notes, checks on the books at the dealership, answers messages from teachers, mentors, community organizers. Some want him to speak. Others just want advice. He tries to respond to everyone, because there was a time when no one would have asked him anything but, "Where the product at?" One evening, he receives a call from a national education nonprofit. They're launching a curriculum focused on conflict resolution and decision-making in underserved high schools. They want to license portions of his life story, not paid in full, not the movie. Him, the real narrative, the after. They ask if he'd be open to collaborating on a module. Redefining power, from kingpin to mentor. Azie doesn't even hesitate. He says yes. He's brought into the writing process, not just as a subject, but a co-creator. His ideas shape the structure, His words guide the tone. He insists they drop the heavy-handed, scared straight energy. They don't need fear, he tells them. They already know fear. Give them options. The team listens, learns, adjusts. When the pilot program launches in a few schools across the tri-state area, he visits one, just to feel the effect. In a Newark classroom, he sits in the back as the teacher reads aloud. I didn't become a kingpin because I wanted to hurt people. I became one because I didn't see any other route to respect. The room is silent. Then the discussion begins, and Azie sees something beautiful. Students not arguing over right or wrong, but asking, what would I have done? What could I do differently? That's it. That's the shift. He leaves the school with quiet pride humming in his chest. Not the loud pride that flexes, the kind that feels clean. Back in Harlem, a local news outlet runs a piece on him. Azie Faison, from empire to impact. They get most of the facts right. For once, they don't lean on the flashy stuff. They talk about his second act, his workshops, his insistence on staying here, in the neighborhood that watched him rise and fall. There's a quote from a kid in the article. He didn't save me. He made me want to save myself. Azie reads that part twice, then clips it out and tapes it to the inside of his kitchen cabinet. Not for show, just to remember. Around this time, a podcast host reaches out. Not just any podcast, the Atlantic Files. Big platform. Long-form interviews. They want to do an episode called When Legends Choose Silence. He agrees. The interview is raw. Over an hour of reflection. No movie talk. No rewinding old betrayals. Just big questions, answered slowly. When the host asks, what's the biggest misconception about you? Azie doesn't hesitate. That I liked who I was back then. I didn't. I just got good at pretending I did. The episode drops and trends for a week. Not viral. Just steady. Emails pour in. One stands out. It's from a former prosecutor. She once helped build the case that nearly took him down. Now she runs a restorative justice program in Baltimore. She writes, I used to only see numbers and files. Now I see people. Thank you for helping with that shift. He reads it 3 times, then replies, we're all still learning, and that's okay. One afternoon, while visiting Monique, they talk about the future. She's writing a book of her own, part memoir, part blueprint for healing. She asks Azie if he ever thinks about leaving Harlem. He shakes his head. I don't want to run from the soil that grew me. I just want to help till it better. That night, he revisits the old shoebox with the letters, pulls one at random. A young man from Detroit, 17, already lost 2 friends to the game, writes, I just want to get to 21, that's it. Azie writes him back. Short note. No lecture. You will, and when you do, you'll realize that 25 is worth aiming for too. He's learned that hope doesn't need to shout. It just needs to respond. At a youth summit weeks later, Azie steps up to a microphone in front of 400 teenagers. No script, just presence. He says, if nobody told you today that you're allowed to want more than survival, let me be the first. And the room? It's quiet, not because they're bored, but because sometimes silence is the sound of minds changing. Afterward, a girl no older than 16 hugs him hard, whispers, you made it seem possible. He doesn't cry, but he feels it, deep. Because maybe the real win isn't legacy, it's permission to imagine a life beyond the corner, to speak truth without shame, to walk without armor, to just be still here, still moving, still healing. By the time summer settles into Harlem, the rhythm changes again. The streets hum later into the night. Music spills from open windows. Fire hydrants burst open like neighborhood traditions. The scent of jerk chicken from sidewalk grills mixes with engine smoke and the scent of new asphalt. Azie blends into the background easily now. Not anonymous, just respected differently. People see him and nod. Not because they fear him, but because they remember. And memory, in a place like Harlem, is the strongest form of currency. He spends his mornings with purpose, walks through local parks, checks in with young guys from the mentorship program, responds to messages, and still, quietly, writes. One afternoon, he visits a small community library that's been struggling to stay funded. The place feels frozen in time, sagging bookshelves, cracked linoleum, a tiny reading corner for kids. But it feels like sanctuary. The librarian, an older woman named Mrs. Darden, beams when she sees him. "You know we got 4 boys in here reading your story like it's fiction?" He chuckles. Maybe because it reads like something that shouldn't be true. They keep asking if you're coming in to talk, so he does. No big promotion. No cameras. Just a folding chair and 15 kids. All eyes, all questions, all hoping. He talks about legacy again. But more than that, he talks about choices. Every hour of your life is an investment. Don't spend it like it's loose change. One of the kids, 9 years old, sharp as glass, asks him if he misses the money. It catches him, not because it's naive, but because it's honest. He leans forward. "Sometimes I miss what the money made people think I was. But what I really value now is the quiet that comes from not having to look over my shoulder." They don't clap, but they hear him. That night, Azie thinks about how different the questions are now. Back then, people asked him what he had. Cars, jewelry, power. Now, they ask how he feels. He's learning how to answer. Later in the week, he visits an art studio on 118th, where local youth paint murals over old graffiti-tagged walls. He's invited to add a word to the latest one, something that captures what he stands for. He thinks a long time, then picks up a brush and writes, "Direction," because without it, all ambition turns reckless, and he knows that story too well. In early August, an invitation arrives. A National Youth Justice Conference in D.C. wants him to be the keynote. Expenses paid, full stage, thousands in attendance. He says yes, not for the spotlight, but because the theme is rewriting narratives. And who better? At the conference, he walks on stage to quiet applause. He doesn't wear a suit, just slacks, a button down, and his signature stillness. He opens with a truth most rooms like this avoid. "I built a drug empire before I ever saw a diploma. I had people calling me a genius while I was selling poison. But I didn't realize until later, genius without guidance is just another fire waiting to burn the wrong house down." He talks about Rich, about Alpo, about the lives lost chasing something that never filled them. He doesn't give false hope, he gives honest vision. He closes with, "Don't save kids from the street. Save them from feeling like the street is their only option." The standing ovation surprises him, not because he doubts his message, but because he's never needed noise to measure worth. That night, back in his hotel room, he reads the handwritten program they gave each attendee. Under his name, the quote they pulled, "He didn't just walk away from the game, he walked towards something better." That stays with him. 2 weeks later, Harlem hosts its first annual Peace Festival, organized by local leaders, youth orgs, and yes, with Azie's guidance. It's simple. Music, food, stories, but most importantly, a space to gather without fear. Azie speaks briefly near sundown. He looks out at the families, the kids dancing near the stage, the older heads posted up, watching with arms crossed but eyes soft. He says, "Harlem taught me how to hustle, but it also taught me how to heal. And today, I see more healing than I ever thought possible." No fanfare, no lights, just truth, the kind that settles like roots. As the sun dips behind the brownstones and the lights flicker on one by one, Azie walks off stage into a crowd that no longer sees him as a myth, but as a mirror, proof that change isn't just survival. It's a choice, over and over again. And tonight, he made the right one. Again, the heat clings to Harlem like a second skin. By mid-August, the pavement seems to shimmer, and the city pulses a little louder, a little closer. But for Azie, summer has always carried something else. Memory. The weight of long nights, of windows cracked open, and secrets whispered across rooftops, of laughter that masked fear, of youth that burned too hot, too fast. He's older now, but Harlem still knows his name. He doesn't chase visibility. He lets it find him. The neighborhood does that anyway. His name comes up in quiet conversations between barbers and clients, between corner hustlers and their little brothers, between old heads playing chess on milk crates. Remember Azie? Yeah, he's still around? Still walking, still doing his work. That's the reputation now. Not the weight he moved, but the weight he carries without breaking. One day, an unexpected letter arrives from the Department of Education. They're building a pilot program called Pathways, an initiative to train formerly incarcerated mentors to guide at-risk youth in real time, in real schools, with real stakes. They want Azie as a founding advisor. He reads the letter twice, then sets it down. This isn't just a speaking gig. It's infrastructure. It's policy. It's shaping the system from the inside, not just patching up damage from the outside. He says yes. In the first meeting, he sits across from bureaucrats, youth psychologists, and district lawyers, people with degrees, people who mean well, but who have never stood on a corner, wondering which shadow might shoot. He listens first, always, then speaks. If y'all want to reach these kids, stop talking at them. Let them write their own narrative, and just make sure they don't bleed before they finish the story. The room goes still. Someone writes that line down. That becomes the heart of the program. Azie helps develop training materials, sits on panels, coaches former gang members turned outreach workers. He teaches them not how to preach, but how to hold space. One man, fresh off a 10-year bid, struggles during his first school visit. He calls Azie the next day, shaken. They looked at me like I was the problem. Azie replies, "You were the problem, but now you're part of the answer. Walk in that truth. Don't run from it." Simple words, but they settle like medicine. Meanwhile, Azie continues his work in Harlem. He attends city hall meetings, speaks out when a landlord tries to push low-income families out of a block he once ruled. He's not an activist by label, but by instinct. He doesn't tweet, doesn't chase news cycles, he just shows up. One day, an old friend shows up at the dealership, Deshaun, from way back. They sit in Azie's small office, dusty fan clicking rhythmically, both sipping water bottles like it's beer. "I still can't believe you got out, man," Deshaun says, shaking his head. Azie shrugs. "I didn't get out. I changed shape. The game didn't stop. I just stopped letting it name me." They sit in silence a while. Then Deshaun says something Azie wasn't expecting. "You ever think about running for something? Council? Borough rep?" Azie actually laughs, long and low. "Nah, politics doesn't need another face. It needs pressure. And I'm better on the outside pushing than inside compromising." Still, the idea lingers, not because he wants power, but because he knows what it means to have a seat before the damage is done. Later that week, Monique brings up the same idea. "Why not you? You've already got the people." "I don't want them looking at me," he replies. "I want them looking at each other, building, trusting." She smiles. "You're already leading. You just don't like the word." He lets that sit. That evening, he takes another walk through the neighborhood. At 137th, he sees a group of teenagers blasting music from a parked car. They're laughing, playing dice on the hood. It could have been 1987. One of them sees Azie and calls out, "Ayo, big homie." He turns, raises an eyebrow. "You used to run with Rich, right?" Azie walks closer. The energy shifts. Less bravado now. "Yeah," he says, "I did. You was like the brains behind the whole thing?" He nods again. No shame, no pride, just fact. "Y'all was legends." Azie looks at them, then says, "Legends die fast. You want to be something real? Stick around long enough to outlive your own myth." The kid goes quiet. So do the others. Azie doesn't lecture. He just claps the nearest one on the shoulder and walks on. Sometimes that's all it takes. He gets home, jots the moment down in his notebook. Myth fades, but memory builds. choose memory, and for the first time in a long while, he considers writing another book. Not about the past, but about what comes after. He already has the title, After the Fire, because that's what this life is. Not smoke, not ashes, but growth. On the same soil where it once burned, September edges into Harlem with a softer breath. The heat wanes just enough to notice the change. Sidewalks cool beneath morning shadows. Storefronts swap tank tops for school supplies. The rhythm remains, but it slows, refines, becomes reflective. Azie begins his mornings with stillness now. Coffee in hand, notebook open, no music, no phones. Just him, the hum of the city, and the ache of memory turning gently into purpose. The title of the new book, After the Fire, sits boldly at the top of the first page. He doesn't start with the empire. He starts with the emptiness that followed it. No one tells you how quiet the world gets once the phones stop ringing, once the money isn't calling your name. That silence can heal you or swallow you. Writing comes slowly but honestly. No ghostwriters, no publishing contract yet. Just truth, raw and unfiltered. Some days, he only writes 2 paragraphs. Other days, 10 pages. He isn't rushing. This time, he's not chasing relevance. He's archiving resilience. Word gets out. A local journalist for the Amsterdam News requests an interview. Young, curious, and persistent. She wants to talk not about the past, but about how a former kingpin becomes a pillar. Azie agrees. They meet at a small cafe on Lenox. No handlers, no setup. Just 2 notepads and a recorder. She asks, "What do you think people get wrong about redemption?" He answers slowly. They think it's a one-time thing, like a speech or a moment or a headline. But redemption's a practice. Every day you wake up and decide not to repeat the damage, you're earning it again. The quote goes viral, not because he planned it, because it's real. A few weeks later, the article becomes a feature. Harlem bookstores display his face again, this time next to words like mentor, advocate, educator. The irony isn't lost on him. He once saw his name printed on DEA reports. Now it's on community murals. Meanwhile, the Pathways program expands. Azie helps bring it to Brooklyn, then Queens. He travels weekly now. Small town halls, charter school boardrooms, youth detention facilities. In each place, he carries the same energy. Calm, present, unflinching. One afternoon, he visits Rikers Island, not to scold, but to listen. He sits in a circle with 10 teenage inmates. No guards, just space. They ask him things most adults wouldn't answer. You ever been scared? Why didn't you just take the money and leave? Was it worth it? He doesn't flinch. To the first, yes. Real courage is moving forward anyway. To the second, because I didn't know where else to go. To the third, no. But the lesson was, the room grows quiet. One boy, barely 16, says, "I want to do better, but I don't think I can." Azie looks him in the eyes. "Then borrow my belief until you find your own." That moment stays with the boy, and with Azie. He writes it down that night. Borrow my belief. He thinks it might be the subtitle of the book. Back in Harlem, a small production company reaches out, interested in adapting his story again, this time as a streaming docuseries. He's hesitant. "I've told this story," they counter. "Not this part of it," he considers. Not because he needs the spotlight, but because visibility, when guided with care, is a tool. But this time he wants final edit, control, integrity. If his name's on it, it's going to mean something. They agree. Shooting begins quietly. Mostly interviews, street shots, moments of him in schools, bookstores, libraries. He refuses stage drama. No reenactments, no fake gunshots, just truth. It's a different kind of power. Meanwhile, his relationship with Monique deepens. Not loud or flashy, just 2 people finding rhythm and honesty. One evening, walking home from dinner, she says, "You ever think you were supposed to burn through all that? just to get here? He smiles. I think I was always here. I just had to stop running from it. Fall colors arrive. Leaves drift onto the sidewalks like memory returning. And one afternoon, while standing in a Harlem park where he once sold his first pack, Azie watches kids chase a football across grass that was once barren. He exhales, not nostalgia, but peace, because somehow, against every odd, he made it to the other side of the story, not erased, but rewritten, and the ink's still wet. By winter, Harlem softens beneath a hush of gray skies and slow mornings. The cold has a way of quieting the noise, of drawing the city inward. Stoops gather frost instead of footsteps. Conversations become nods. But for Azie, the stillness is a kind of rhythm now, a meditation, not a void. The manuscript grows, page by page, after the fire begins to take form, not as a memoir of the streets, but a manual for rebirth. He organizes the chapters around moments of reckoning, some his, some others, but all woven through with one thread, the choice to live differently. Publishers begin circling. Some offer fat advances, shiny rollouts, promises of national tours. He declines most. He wants a smaller house, black-owned, Harlem-rooted, one that won't strip his voice for palatability. Eventually, he finds the right one. A former librarian runs it. Her father used to read Malcolm X speeches in church basements. She doesn't flinch when he says he wants full control of the message. They sign the deal with no champagne, just two hands shaking over a warm desk. Meanwhile, the documentary moves forward. The footage is raw, elegant. No overproduced grit. Just Azie walking through his old neighborhood, pausing in front of stoops where boys used to post up, sitting in silence where gunfire once echoed. His voiceover is calm, not performative, not defensive. Everybody talks about the rise and fall, he says in one scene. But what about the climb after the fall? That's the part that tests you. Clips from his school talks are cut in. Kids laughing, kids crying. One girl says on camera, "My uncle died in a shootout 2 blocks from here. Mr. Faison didn't just give a speech, he saw me. That's different." The production crew cries. They rap quietly. No rap party, just gratitude. Release is scheduled for spring. Back in Harlem, the youth mentorship work expands again. Azie begins piloting a new program, the Second Chapter Project, pairing formerly incarcerated adults with creative writing mentors. The idea is simple. If they can name their story, they can change its ending. One young man, 22, writes a poem titled, "I Wasn't Born a Weapon." Azie reads it in silence, then places it on his desk under a rock. That's where he keeps the pages that need to stay, not for fame, for grounding. Meanwhile, his daughter begins applying to college. He watches her fill out essays late at night, headphones in, typing steadily. One evening, she reads him her draft. It's titled, "How My Father Taught Me What Strength Really Means." He doesn't interrupt, just listens. She finishes. He wipes his face with the sleeve of his hoodie, not from grief, but from pride he never expected to live long enough to feel. Later that week, a familiar name surfaces. Alpo, the man many still link to Rich's death, is reportedly back in town. Rumors fly. Azie doesn't respond. He doesn't tweet, doesn't post, but the memory stirs. He remembers the betrayal, the disbelief, the deep hurt wrapped in silence. But he also remembers the years he spent not letting that moment define him. Vengeance is loud. Healing is quiet. He whispers it to himself like a mantra. A few weeks later, Alpo is shot and killed in Harlem. The news breaks quickly. People ask Azie for comment. He declines. He has nothing to celebrate, nothing to mourn, only the sobering truth that some stories don't get second chapters, that some ghosts refuse to rest until the city forgets how to speak their name. That night, Azie visits Rich's old block, alone. No fanfare. He lights a candle on the corner, not out of closure, but out of respect. Rich deserved more chapters. The city failed him. They all did. But Azie's still here, still building. still teaching boys how to name their ghosts before they become one. The next morning he writes another page, then gets dressed for a school visit. On the way out, Monique stops him. "You okay?" He nods. "Yeah, just reminded why I do this." She smiles, and he steps into the cold, coat zipped up, bag over shoulder, moving with the quiet urgency of a man who refuses to let memory rot into regret, because winter will pass. And spring, his spring, is almost here. Spring arrives not with a roar, but with softness. Pigeons strut differently on Harlem rooftops. Brownstone stoops collect sun instead of snow. And for the first time in a long time, Azie notices himself smiling for no reason. The book drops in April. No flashy launch party, no champagne. Just a reading at a local youth center, folding chairs in a semicircle, and the smell of old paper and new beginnings. He reads aloud from the chapter titled "Borrow My Belief." His voice is even, but the room feels like it's pulsing. Afterward, a young boy stands up and says, "I didn't know gangsters could feel stuff." Azie chuckles. "Most of us did. We just weren't allowed to show it." Word spreads. After the Fire climbs slowly through indie bestseller lists, then explodes after a feature on NPR. A professor from Columbia calls. She wants to add the book to her curriculum on urban sociology and race. Azie doesn't brag about that, but he tells Monique with a glimmer in his eye, "I think Rich would have liked that." The docuseries drops 2 weeks later on a major streaming platform. Reviews pour in. Words like intimate, elegant, unflinching, and redemptive headline the praise. One critic writes, "Azie Faison doesn't just tell his story, he reclaims it. Frame by frame, this is a meditation on Black survival, masculinity, and the quiet revolution of choosing not to repeat the cycle." Azie's old crew watches it together. Those still around. They gather in a living room on 138th Street. No chains, no flash. Just grown men leaning into a screen they never imagined would show their truth. After it ends, no one says much. But one guy, Tank, the muscle from back in the day, wipes a tear and says, "Man, I ain't cried in 20 years." They order pizza. It feels like church. Requests for speaking gigs roll in fast. Princeton, Howard, San Quentin. Azie sets boundaries. Only accepts the ones where he can speak directly to those who need it most. Kids, inmates, single mothers trying to reach their sons. During a visit to a juvenile facility in Ohio, he tells a room of young men, "You don't owe the world your toughness. You owe yourself your future." They don't clap, they just nod, and that means more. Meanwhile, the Second Chapter Project publishes its first poetry anthology. We were never just numbers. Azie writes the foreword. "You are not the worst thing you've done. You are not a file or a mugshot. You are breath, possibility. Tomorrow, if you choose it." The book is passed around barbershops, classrooms, even prison libraries. That summer, something unexpected happens. Azie gets a letter from a woman whose son was killed during the height of his operation. She's read the book, seen the documentary, watched the interviews. Her letter is handwritten, neat and brief. "You'll never be able to give me my son back, but I can see that you've made your life mean something. That matters more than I expected it would. Keep going." He reads it twice. Then he weeps into Monique's arms like the weight finally cracked open. Not guilt, not even grief, but grace. Forgiveness doesn't erase, but it frees. Later that night he writes again. This time not for the book, or the press, or the project, just for himself. The journal entry begins. "Today I felt the kind of peace I thought only dead men got to keep." In August, his daughter gets into NYU. Azie stands outside the admissions office, hand on her shoulder, and says, "I never thought I'd see this day, but I always prayed for it." She smiles, tears in her lashes. "You gave me a different story, Dad, thank you." By now, people stop him on the street, not with fear, but with respect. An older man says, "I remember you when you were the flame." Azie replies, "Now I'm just trying to be the light." Fall begins again. And this time, it doesn't feel like a closing chapter. It feels like a second act. No crown, no empire, but something rarer. A man at peace in his own name. In the fall hush, Harlem wears its golden rust like a crown. Leaves drift through old alleyways where young boys once counted stacks. The stoops Azie used to post on now bear pumpkins, not paranoia. He walks the same streets, but the city no longer whispers warnings. It nods in respect. He has survived, and not just the bullets, betrayal or brokenness. He survived himself, the hardest part. Now, his mornings begin with stretches, journaling, and black coffee. He no longer wakes with urgency. There is still work to do, but it doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like purpose. One Sunday, he gives a guest sermon at a small church in East Harlem. The congregation is quiet, attentive, mostly women and their sons. He doesn't preach. He just tells a story. He tells them about a boy who wanted money because his house had none. About a teenager who became a millionaire before he became a man. About a kingpin who watched his empire collapse faster than it rose. And about the ghost of a friend named Rich who never got to grow old. And then he tells them about forgiveness. Not the clean, easy kind, but the jagged kind. The kind you carry like a stone in your shoe until one day, you finally decide to stop limping and take it out. When he finishes, there are no applause, just the soft sniffles of mothers who've lost sons and boys who still have a chance. He leaves quietly, like he came. Back at home, the second edition of After the Fire is underway. He adds a new chapter, The Echo Room, about revisiting past spaces and finding they no longer have power over you. Meanwhile, a boy from the writing program, age 16, wins a city poetry competition with a piece titled, I Was Raised by Silence. Azie frames it, hangs it in the entryway of the office, not far from Rich's photo. Years pass, and Azie's name slowly becomes less synonymous with the streets and more with second chances. He's not a myth, not a hero, just a man who said, I want better, and then meant it. He starts mentoring younger leaders, those just entering community work, or nonprofits, or city planning. He teaches them about trust, about patience, and about listening first. One of them, a 28-year-old woman from Brooklyn, asks him, how did you know when it was finally over? The need to prove yourself. He pauses. It's never really over, but the volume goes down when you learn to love your own quiet. By now, he visits Rich's grave every year on the same date. No flowers, just a sit down, a talk. Sometimes he brings his daughter. Other times he comes alone. This year he whispers, we got out, man. Not clean, not whole, but we got out. The wind answers, and that's enough. So, as we leave Azie's journey behind tonight, let the weight of his choices settle gently across your chest. Not heavy, not harsh, just enough to remind you that change is never loud. It's quiet, slow, sometimes painful, always possible. Let the city fade now, the sirens, the corner deals, the gold chains glinting beneath street lamps. Let those images melt into dusk. All that remains is a man, older now, walking home with a different kind of swagger, one built from healing, not hustle. There's peace in his pace, forgiveness in his shadow, and hope in his silhouette. If there's anything to take from this tale, besides the cautionary echoes of fast money, it's that even in a world wired for destruction, softness is survival too. That even in Harlem's hardest corners, a voice can rise not to shout, but to soothe. So take one last deep breath. Feel the calm spreading behind your eyes. Let the story cradle you, not to stir, but to settle. And if the night still feels heavy, remember, some lives are written in fire, but rewritten in quiet ink. You're safe now. Sleep comes easy. Dream slow.